Thus far, we've been changing properties in the design phase of our projects, but we can also change properties of controls using code. As we move into coding, that'll be one thing we do very early on. In fact, most output is displayed by changing the property of an object. So here's a little project I have running called College Logos. I have 5 campuses down at the bottom. We can click on a campus and see the name of the campus with its colors. So SMCC, Arizona State University. It's also displaying the logo for each of these campuses. University of Arizona, Northern Arizona University, and Grand Canyon University. What's happening when I click any one of these buttons is we're changing the text property of this label, the back color, and the fore color, and then we're changing which image index we're using for that logo based on an image list collection. The process of changing properties programmatically in the statement we would use is in the format of the object name, a dot, or what we refer to as maybe as a period. We usually use the name dot in coding. So object name dot the property value we want to change, and then we're assigning it some new value using an equal sign. So object dot property equals new value. So if we wanted to change the text property of a text box named txtuser to display the name John Doe, the statement would be txtuser.text equals, and John Doe is a literal string, meaning the compiler won't understand what it is unless we put it in quotes. So whenever we see quotes with text, that is called a literal string. And then of course in C# we always need to end our statement with a semicolon. When we click the SMCC button in that project I just showed you, it's going to run the code that is in this event procedure. The event procedure named btn SMCC, that's the name of our button, _click. That's a name that is assigned based on the object and the event that we're handling. And here we're changing the text of a label called LBL Campus to display South Mountain Community College, literal string. We could change the back color of that label to display an orange color. And by the way, the new value has to be in whatever data type the property is expecting. So text has to be a string value. It can be a literal string, it could be a string variable, it could be a string constant, but it has to be a string value. The back color has to be a color value. And there's a whole list of about 140 different colors that we can grab using color dot in the name of that color. So if I want the back color to be orange, I can say it equals color.orange. Changing the fore color, that's going to be the text color, equals color.white. And then for LBL logo, that's the label up above that shows the logo, I'm changing the image index equals to 3, which is the South Mountain logo that was part of the image list that label is tied to. Now when we think about orange and white, those are pretty basic colors, and a lot of times organizations and companies have branding guidelines and they have specific colors you want to use. So if you were to do something for Arizona State University, it's maroon and gold, but it's not any maroon or any gold. It's got to be their particular shade of maroon and particular shade of gold. And they will often provide those to you in a branding guide. So I'm going to change the statement lblcampus.backcolor equals color.orange because the South Mountain orange is a hexadecimal value of CF7C00, or that's broken down into red, green, blue. And instead of specifying orange, I can instead use the statement of lblcampus.backcolor equals color.from ARGB. The A is the transparent value, and then the R is red, green, and blue. And here are my values for red, green, and blue. 207, which is the same as CF in hexadecimal format. And this is the decimal format. 127 decimal, which represents the 7C hexadecimal, and 0, which represents the 00 for the blue value. So it's always red, green, blue. That will display this very precise shade of orange. So let's get a little hands-on practice with this. We're going to recreate this college logos application in Visual Studio using C#. So let's go to Visual Studio. In Visual Studio, I'm going to go to the File menu and choose New Project. We want to create a Visual C# project. using Windows Forms app. I'm going to give this a name of College Colors. Choose where I want it to be saved, and then click the OK button. So here's my project in the IDE of Visual Studio. I have my Form 1 open up over here. I'm going to go to the properties for Form 1. I'm going to come down to the text property, and we're going to change the text to be College Colors. When I press the Enter key, that will appear up on the title bar of my form. I'm going to change the size to be 600, 400. So 600 pixels wide by 400 pixels high. Gives me a little bit larger form to work with. And then we're going to add some controls to this. I'm going to start with a label. I'm going to drag a label, basically leaving some space on the left and right margins, just below kind of the center line. And I want to make this fairly tall, so about that size. I'm going to name this label. I'm going to refer to it in code. I'm going to name it LBL, Hungarian notation for labels. LBL Campus. I'm going to change the auto size. You'll notice it stretched back to the original size of a label based on the contents of that label. I want to change that to false. So it's the size that I defined it to be. I'm going to change the border style to be fixed single. For the text, we're going to give some instructions to the user of click a campus button below. I'm going to change the text align so that it is in the center. And then for the font, I'm going to change the font to be bold 18 point. Microsoft Sans Serif bold 18 point. That looks pretty good. Now I'm going to take a button. And I'm going to create a button just below the label to the left. We're going to name this button BTN, Hungarian notation for a button, BTN SMCC, and I capitalize all of SMCC. The text is going to be SMCC. That's all I need to do for that button. I'm going to copy it, select it, copy it, paste it. We'll position this one to the right of that button. We're going to change the text to ASU and the name to be BTN ASU. I'm going to paste again. Control V will give you a paste, or you can choose Edit Menu and Paste. This one's going to be BTN UA, and the text will be U of A, University of Arizona. I'm going to paste one more time. This fourth button will be, text will be NAU. The name of the button will be BTN NAU. Anytime you're going to refer to an object in code, you generally want to give it a meaningful name. I like to use the Hungarian notation. It's kind of a throwback from Visual Basic. Most C# programmers probably don't use Hungarian notation. In Visual Basic, it's fairly standard. I like it because it shows me by the name what kind of object that is. So anything that starts with BTN, I know that's a button. Anything that starts with LBL, I know it's a label. Anything with TXT is a text box. PIC is a picture box, and so forth. We're going to paste one more button. This one's going to be BTN GCU for Grand Canyon University. And we'll change the text to be GCU. Now I'm going to select all 5 of those buttons just by dragging a box with my pointer that intersects each of those 5. So you can see they're now all selected. I just want to make sure they are aligned at the top using our layout toolbar. And I want to make sure that they are equidistant from each other So making horizontal spacing equal. And since I copied and pasted all the same size, but if that was a concern, you have a option here to make them all the same size. We are then going to create another label up here towards the top. This label, I'm going to set the auto size to false. We're going to name this one LBL logo. I'm going to set the border style to fixed single. I'm going to get rid of the text that's there. I don't want any text in this label. So I'm just going to highlight through it and press the delete key. And then for the size, I'm going to display images in here, and those images are 255 by 125 pixels. So I'm going to choose that as my choice, 255, 125. And it's going to position this so it's visually centered above that label. So I refer to these as LBL logo, LBL campus, BTN SMCC, BTN ASU, BTN UA, BTN NAU, and BTN GCU. By the way, if you wanted to select an object, you can click on it, but you can also come down here to this drop-down arrow and find objects with their names here. This is a great way to find an object maybe that's been hidden behind another object, because you can always access that object in this list. It's also a great way to come back and check and make sure everything is named. I don't want to have a button named button 1 or button 2. In this case, I don't want my labels to be label 1 or label 2. So it's an easy way to be able to check that and make sure that everything is correctly named before I start doing some coding. Now I need one more object, and that's an image list, which is going to contain the images. So I'm going to bring the image list. That's going to be in the components of my toolbox. Bring the image list over. It's going to put it in the system tray. I'm going to name this IMG logos. I'm going to change the bit depth to 24-bit and change the size to 255, 125. And then I need to go get those images before I can add them to the collection. So I'm going to jump over to our Canvas course site. You have to log into the Canvas course site, and then we're going to go into the modules area. And I'm going to scroll down here. You're going to find in the Unit 2 modules on interface development, I put a zip file here called collegelogos.zip. I'm going to click on that, and then I have an option to download it. So I'm going to download it to my hard drive, or you can download it to your thumb drive. And I'm going to open up the zip file. I want to be cognizant of where it's downloaded. So it's in my downloads folder. I'm going to choose to extract all. We'll get a folder called College Logos. That's perfect. I'm just going to say extract. And there then are my 5 logos that have been extracted. Okay, so I just want to make sure I know where that's at. That's in the downloads folder of my PC, a folder called College Logos. I'm going to go back to Visual Studio. And now in my IMG Logos image list, I'm going to click on Collections. I'm going to add to the members, and I need to go find those images. So that was in my Downloads folder. So I'm going to go to my College Logos folder, select those 5 images. You can do a shift click on the first one, hold down the shift key, click on the last one. That'll select all 5, and you bring them all 5 in together. Now these will come in alphabetized. They're not quite in the order that we might want them, maybe for our buttons. And if we want to, we can change the order of these. So if I want to keep with the order, I might have SMCC as 0, ASU, U of A was my 3rd one, NEU was 4th, and GCU was last. It doesn't matter if you change the order or not, just make sure you know what the numbers are associated with each of the images. I'm going to click OK. Now I'm going to take this label, my LBL logo label, and we're going to set 2 more properties. One is the image list. We're going to tie it to that image list of collections. In the drop-down list, we can choose IMG logos, and then I can choose an index number from those images. You could leave it at none. I'm going to go ahead and just choose the South Mountain one as 0 just to start off with. So when we click the SMCC button, initially nothing would change. That logo is already there, but we would be able to change this information in the Clicker Campus below LBL Campus logo. All right, that's our interface. Now we're ready to code. So I'm going to code the SMCC button by double-clicking on it. It's going to take me into the code editor. And we get the standard using statements for our C# project. We are in our class for Form 1. We have a initializer for Form 1 that initializes the components. And when I double-clicked on that button, it gave me a stub or an event procedure, the shell of that, and it named it by default the name of my object that I double-clicked on, and it's guessing that I really want to handle a click event. So it gave me a name of btn smcc underscore click. Now, I can change that name if I want. I recommend at this point kind of stick with your names. Make sure you name your objects first so these make sense. We'll look in a later video how to rename these and how to assign different events to different objects. We're going to ignore the stuff inside the parentheses for now. What we're interested in are these two curly brackets, which begins our code and ends our code. When we click that button, everything between those two curly brackets is what will be executed as we write our code. So the first thing we're going to do is take LBL Campus. Remember, we're using the name of the object, a dot, the property we want to set, in this case is going to be text, equals, and then in quotes, South Mountain Community College. And I want my semicolon. Then I'm going to change the back color and the fore color of that label. So LBL Campus dot back color. Notice I can choose items in the IntelliSense here. So I can choose back color. All I have to really do is type the B, and I get a list starting with the B's, and I can go through that list and choose whichever I want. Just double click on it, and that selects it. Equals, and we saw earlier we can do a from ARGB method, and in the parentheses we specify the value that we want for our red, green, blue. The South Mountain Orange is a red value of 207, a green value of 127, and a blue value of 0. I'm going to make sure I put my semicolon at the end of that statement. The little red squiggly goes away. And we then want LBL Campus dot fore color. By the way, that little red squiggly is bad. If you misspell something, you're going to get a red squiggly. So I'm going to make this error here. We want color dot white on this one for the text. Oops. And notice I misspelled fore color. It gives me this little red squiggly underline. And that's a visual clue that you've typed something that the compiler is not going to understand, and when you try to compile it, it's going to give you an error. So I can look at that and go, oh yeah, I misspelled fore color. Let me change that. Same way if you make it, if you change the case sensitivity on it, so the C should be capitalized, it doesn't understand what fore color is with a lowercase c. C# is case sensitive. Then the last thing I want to do here is change the logo label, LBL logo. I'm going to change the image index. It's expecting an integer value. So South Mountain was 0. So there is our SMCC button. When we click it, it's going to do those 4 things. Each of these are changing 4 properties, assigning new values to those properties. To go back to my design, I'm going to click on this design tab up here. Let's double click the ASU. And I'm going to kind of cheat here a little bit. Since I really want to do the same 4 things and just changing the values, I'm going to select the code from btn smcc and paste it. And we'll make this say Arizona State University. The ASU color for the maroon that we want for the background here, if you look up the branding guide on the internet, you'd find that it's 140, 29 green, so 140 red, 29 green, and 64 blue. I'm going to do the same thing for their gold. And the gold color is 255, 198, and 39. I want to change the image index here to 1. Okay, so let's test this at this point before we do the other 3 buttons and make sure everything's working. I'm going to click the Start button, have it compile. Before you do that, you just want to check your code, make sure there's no squigglies under any of your code. So here's the SMCC button. We get South Mountain Community College with the SMCC orange and white text. ASU, we get the ASU logo. Arizona State University with the maroon background and the gold foreground. That is working as we would expect. Now we need to do the other 3 buttons. So I'm going to close my running application, back to the IDE. We're going to go to the design, and I'm going to do a little shortcut here. I'm going to select all 3 of these and then double click, and I get stubs for each of those 3. So this is the GCU one. This should say Grand Canyon University. And here, I'm not going to bother to look up what the actual purple is. We're just going to make this purple. We're going to make the foreground white. And our image index in this case was 4. It's the last one in our list. I'm just going to copy, paste that for our NAU. So this one says Northern Arizona University. We're going to make this a navy. And a gold 4 color. And our image index is 3. And then our last one here is University of Arizona. And our color here will also be navy with red as our 4 color, and this should be a 2. All right, so let's test this, see if it now works. I'm going to come back, click the Start button. SMCC, ASU, University of Arizona, NAU, and GCU. And all those buttons work. And that's our project. At this point, we can go to the File menu, choose Save All. And if we were to go find that code, we would find there's now an exe file in the debug folder of our project folder. And we could take that exe file and distribute that to other computers, and they'd be able to run it.